Hey there friends, my name is Varj, and today I want to talk about the March update and what that means for the game. Now I know I'm a little late to the party here, but I still want to have this discussion. Now before I get into any game related stuff, a few things. With all the craziness going on around the world, I give kudos to Steven, Margaret, Jeff, pretty much everyone else at Intrepid for really showing their resiliency, and for real, hats off to you guys. It would have been so easy to make an excuse and delay this live stream and just pass it off and just completely not do it and then just do one for April. I think it shows, like I said, resiliency, leadership, and an incredible amount of vulnerability. At the end of the day, that's just something we can all relate with and we really appreciate. One last thing, this shouldn't really need to be said, but we all know how people are, especially on the internet. This is only an iteration of Alpha 1, so just keep that in mind as we go through this. This is a great way for the team to collect feedback and just polish some stuff up, like core systems and whatnot, before actually heading into Alpha 1. Plus, typically MMOs take upwards of 5 years to develop anyway, so despite all the comments I've seen on Reddit and pretty much everywhere else people tend to have a voice, don't really focus on the timeline too much, let's just focus on the progress that's put in front of us. So this iteration had a lot of good stuff in it. First things first, map and scaling. I'm not 100% sure where they are on Vera, but I have two theories. Looking at these two mountains here, they're either here or they're over here. If they're here, then one, this island is big, and two, the scale of this world is massive. However, if they are over here, then I guess it would make more sense, and it would probably be a better starting area for the Alpha 1 test. Either way, it seems really easy to get caught up in this immersive world. Next, we're on to sound and visual effects. The sound effects on weapon skills and abilities seem to line up pretty well, and it actually felt pretty good, at least it did to me. It was one thing that I was kind of worried about, to be completely honest. The quest sound and visual effects were really refreshing, and I'll tell you why in just a second. The gathering auras and speeds were well tuned, at least I thought so, and they were really aesthetically pleasing. In addition to all this, quests seem to be shared automatically with your party, which I'm not 100% sure on because they never really elaborated on it, but they definitely made it sound that way. Now back to the quest effects, I can't tell you how many times I've been in-game and just blasted through quest dialogue. 20 levels later, because my quest log is full, I notice I had a quest from that interaction. Now some would say I deserve it, and don't get me wrong, I probably do, but it's just nice to have a blatant visual that says, hey, you have something new to do. The last effects I want to touch on were the mounts. The horses looked crisp, and I really liked the movement, the random grunts, the neighs. Overall, I think they really nailed the realism. One thing I want to point out about the caravan health pools. This was really nice to see because when I heard of caravans initially, I immediately thought of one-shot Dark Runners from Arcade, and let me tell you, that gave me PTSD from doing pack runs to the point that I probably didn't do them as much as I should have. However, it looks like Intrepid accounted for that, and the health pools are actually quite massive. Now before someone says, but they killed it within 30 seconds, so it's still large enough to wipe the team and steal the loot. Okay, sure, but they were also wearing dev gear, which they had initially stated at the beginning of the live stream that they were going to be stronger than the average player is going to be. I don't know, I'm being optimistic, and I'm hoping this presents a real challenge to the whole caravan system. Now, before I move into the downsides of the live stream and kind of become a negative Nancy here, I just want to point out one more thing. Most of the core systems that were shown off, they were really impressive and they were working pretty well. Being this close to Alpha 1 is not only promising, but it's nice to have the luxury of being able to shift focus to polishing things instead of having to completely rework. Okay, so negative Nancy time. Although most of the sound and visual effects were pretty much on point, a few specific animations were just a little clunky and rigid. For example, when the team was fighting the ogres and some of the bears, it sounded like the auto attacks were registering, but the characters were just standing still, like they were frozen. Now, it could have just been an audio bug or a visual bug, and it was technically functional, but it just wasn't flawless. It wasn't optimized correctly. There were some clipping issues I noticed as well as they were running throughout the world. It was unclear what the collision effects would be for things like rocks, branches, etc. I'm just hoping that it won't hinder movement in any way, in a way that it just doesn't make sense. Because I don't really want to relive certain moments in my MMO career where I'm running from a horde in PvP and I get stuck on a tiny branch and then just rip me. For this next one, I hope I'm not nitpicking. I love fishing in games, and let me tell you, I was so disappointed when they were showing off the system and all they did was press 2 buttons and boom, you got a fish. I was like, what? Excuse me, that doesn't even have a mini game attached to it. Hopefully there is a little bit more to this, and honestly there probably will be, at least I expect there to be, but it's just something that really grinded my gears while I was watching the live stream. Lastly, I guess we're all gonna be airbenders? Seriously though, they addressed this and I know a lot of people were talking about it. The whole walking on air thing was both comical and a little worrying at this point. I know it's an easy fix. I'm not a dev, I don't know the whole process, but I do hope they fix it before alpha, because I can only imagine the memes that's gonna be born from this if they don't. Now, all of this is to be expected at this stage, but I'm still gonna hold them accountable for anything that they can improve on, because as content creators, that's our jobs. Now, there were only a few things that kind of fell into both pros and cons, and I'm gonna kind of go over these in just a moment. First, player collision. This is gonna be pretty awesome for PvP, and it's also gonna be an absolute nuisance for everything else. And let me explain. I remember when ArcAge was in its vanilla patch or in its very early stages. Bored players would block trade routes into cities just for funsies and demand a toll to get in to drop off your trade packs. Now, is this legal? Sure. Is it strategic? Yeah, I guess. Is it fun, however? Let's not even get into that. Now, race advantages can also be an interesting dynamic, because as long as it's balanced effectively, it's going to be fine. However, I hope they don't tie any race passives or anything like that into direct power increases in either PvP, PvE, or any major mechanic outside of just maybe getting some extra gold off of kills or something like that. Because we all know how us as MMO players, how we act. We're going to take advantage of it, and then we're going to judge each other based on what race we locked ourselves into. However, if the advantages are more economical, like I was saying, maybe you get a couple more gold from kills, or you might craft faster, or things like that, things of that nature, I think it'll actually do pretty well. Lastly, gathering nodes, they're not going to be shared. I don't think I really need to explain this one. I just hope that they're a little random in their spawns, because I really don't feel like having to deal with bots and no-life gathering farmers. So usually I would end it here, but I just want to add a few more personal wins from me. So first off, tanks. It seems like they're going to have a leash pull or some kind of control mechanic. So the very first MMO that I've ever played was Aeon. One thing I loved about that game was the control that you had in the fights. For tanks specifically, being able to taunt and manipulate player or NPC movement was so strong, and it was satisfying. I'm really glad that they're integrating this into the game. Now with this, the need for tanks to also build defensively for difficult content is so refreshing. Sure, there's still going to be the odd guild leader that abuses his healers. There's always going to be. But the game seems to require a more realistic approach to difficulty. Now next, not everyone's going to have flying mounts, and you're not going to be able to pay for convenience. At least that's what Steven's telling us, and he's pretty much sticking to his guns on that one. And again, I don't really think I need to go into why this is a good thing or why this is nice. But it will definitely ensure the integrity of the scale of the world. Because otherwise, if everyone's flying around, it's going to be WoW 2.0, and that's a yikes for me. Lastly, the team was not afraid to admit that they're still working on issues. They showcased what they had, they explained any hiccups along the way, they focused on putting their best foot forward, and for that, they have my respect. Now, with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any criticisms or feedback for me, please don't hesitate to throw it in the comment section down below. With everything going on, I hope you guys are staying safe, enjoying yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.